thing.
Let's get away from all this stupid controversy,
Please,
political
please.
stuff, and let's talk about something far more important: Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, there we go.
Yes. So, guys, guess
What a way to
what?
pivot into the second hour.
Yes.
Sorry, everybody. You either loved or hated the last 72 minutes.
I mean, like, this is all the stuff that's in the news, and we got to talk about that on a news show. But um, there is now going to be a concerted effort by both Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast to create a Dungeons and Dragons TV universe. And chances are it's going to wind up on Netflix. Now, it's not official, but the guy who they have just hired to oversee season 1 of a new Dungeons and Dragons TV series is a guy by the name of Rawson Marshall Thurber. And if you don't know who he is, he's the guy who basically just did the Netflix original movie Red Notice, and he's actually shooting 2 back-to-back Red Notice sequels right now for Netflix. Now, originally Red Notice was a Universal picture, and they went and shot it under the Universal banner. Universal ended up selling it to Netflix during the COVID lockdown because all the theaters were dead and they needed money. So Netflix now has this new series, and Red Notice was a big winner for the Netflix network. I think we talked a little bit about how Netflix determines winners and losers on our last stream, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Notice was one of those things that was just like a huge hit for them. Like it had like a massive efficiency score for them. And so, like, even though it was a $200 million movie, Netflix, through their metrics, determined that, like, hey, this movie made its money back and then some. And so now they're shooting 2 movies back to back to be a sequel to that. And Rawson Marshall Thurber is going to be the guy behind that, but he's also going to be the guy behind a new hour-long series based on Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the interesting things about this is that he's also going to be overseeing spin-offs to the series, which are going to kind of do what Paramount's trying to do with Star Trek, which is have multiple different series set in the same universe. And this is all coming off of the revelation that we're getting a Dungeons and Dragons movie starring Chris Pine. And, it's going to be released on March 3rd of next year. It's got Michelle Rodriguez in it. There's a big cast. It wrapped filming in movie,
That's
right?
true of all things.
Exactly. So they're also going to be adding a little bit of comedy to the Dungeons and Dragons movie. And one of the things that this gentleman, Marshall Thurber, does really well is comedy. Like he's got a background in comedy. And so we're going to be seeing, I think, kind of like a tongue-in-cheekness to the action fantasy thing, almost like what we're seeing with Vox Machina on Amazon, which is also based on Dungeons and Dragons. But are you guys excited about this? Do you think that the Dungeons and Dragons TV universe is going to be something that could be a big hit, Mr. Reagan?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're doing it right, as far as I can tell. You want to distinguish yourself a little bit, I think, from Lord of the Rings, which that's the natural assumption, right? The natural assumption is they're going to do Lord of the Rings, but a little bit, the Dungeons and Dragons thing, because that's what Dungeons and Dragons comes from, right? It comes from the Tolkien concept. That was what inspired it. But and then you've got The Witcher. That's a popular show. They've done very well with that. Although I've not seen The Witcher, but everybody seems to love it. So you do have, and then obviously Game of Thrones. You do have this appetite for this fantasy medieval kind of stuff, but it's all being done very seriously. I think Witcher's pretty serious. You guys may be able to correct me on that because I've not seen it. But certainly, most, like, Game of Thrones is a very serious show, and I feel like for the most part, the Tolkien stuff was relatively serious, especially Hobbit, which was a terrible movie.
Yeah. But Mr. Reagan, I'm going to interrupt you real quick because we have another guest that we're
bring him in.
Mr. Tom Connors from Midnight's Edge is now here. Now that all the politics are done being talked about.
Wow.
Our good friend Tom.
I guess my timing is good then. No,
Yes.
I wasn't sure how much longer you were even going. I was going to say, if you're almost done, don't even bother.
Oh, no. We still got a couple of stories to talk about, but we just talked
I hate
about
interrupting somebody. So nice to meet you guys. So nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, we don't fuck around here on the Salty Nerd podcast. We bring in the heavy hitters. But Tom, we're talking about the Dungeons and Dragons TV universe that Hasbro is trying to create with Rawson Marshall Thurber, the director of Red Notice, and yeah, we're basically Mr. Reagan was just kind of comparing it to the Lord of the Rings over on Amazon. Chris Bucagnani, what did you think of this? Do you think that this is going to be something that could put Netflix on a different level? I mean, they already have The Witcher, but this could be huge because there are legions of D&D fans out there.
Yeah, and so what I liked about what you sent us to read is that it looks like the folks who are involved with doing the writing are fans of the property, which I think is really important because when you take something that is so sacred to such a diehard fan base, you've got to have an understanding and appreciation and respect, reverence, even maybe that's going too far for the source material. And then you expand outward. You make something that is going to satisfy the diehard fans. And to do that, you've got to understand why they're attracted to it in the first place. And then you work your way out from there. And so the notion that it's going to have some humor to it, I think could be good or bad. It could cut one of two ways. If it goes overboard on the self-aware meta irony, I think that's going to be bad because I think it's going to turn away that core audience. They're going to need to come back and going back to your efficiency score, Matt. Rewatch the show.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel
go
it's
back
like
and rewatch
I
previous
feel it's like
seasons.
the Marvel concept of comedy, you know, where like you just throw in like this witty dialogue that's a little bit
Yeah.
modern into the.
I think what we're saying is the
narrative.
comedy has to be done well.
Yes.
and sparingly, right? Judiciously. When I was reading the description of what they're aiming for, I'm thinking, man, if they can hit the vibe of the original Pirates of the Caribbean film that has this fun, swashbuckling air to it, but still takes the subject matter just seriously enough, that is, to Reagan's point, that's going to distinguish it from your Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and still give people something that I think they can really enjoy and not disrespect your core fan base. That's really important, I think.
Well, Tom, you know, Netflix has a long history of screwing with beloved properties, He-Man being a prime example.
Yeah.
Do you think that if this show ends up at Netflix, like it looks like it will because Marshall Thurber's deal is with Netflix and stuff like that, do you think that they will tank it? Do you think they'll make it like another He-Man?
Well, I mean, it all depends on how much influence Netflix has over it at the end, right? I mean, uh, sometimes things can be delivered to Netflix without them having too much oversight. It seems like with like Cobra Kai, for instance, probably because that's produced by Sony and whatnot. But then if they get involved, it seems like that kind of stuff is generally not received so well by the fans. Now, when I think of D&D, I go back to that movie years ago. Wasn't Jeremy Renner in that or something like that?
No, that was not Jeremy Renner.
Who the
I
hell was
saw
it?
that in the
That was
theater.
the kid
What a
from,
disaster.
never mind. I know
Oh.
who it was. It was a kid from Child's Play 3.
Yeah.
I was thinking of. But didn't they kind of lean into some of the humor in that too? And I'm just like,
Well, they had Marlon Wayans there.
Marlon Wayans was in it too. Yes, yes.
And but he wasn't as funny as Jeremy Irons overacting was.
Oh, Jeremy Irons saved that movie. That was
Oh,
the
yeah.
only reason to watch it. It was just like, oh well, the rest of this sucks. At least Jeremy Irons is
Oscar
going to
winner
ham it up for
Jeremy
us.
Irons.
To
it's
use a
beautiful.
quote from him in Die Hard, somebody had fun.
Yeah, somebody had fun.
So Tom seems to be concerned that the comedy is going to maybe be
Not
a little
really.
bit heavy-handed.
I just remembered that that movie was received so poorly. I mean, the thing is the beauty with D&D is it's such a broad, you know, IP that you can do so much with it. Like it has so many elements to it that you could go many different directions, and you could even make an anthology series out of it. I mean, I don't exactly know the ins and outs of what they're doing here. I'd heard about it, but I hadn't heard too much. I probably heard more about it just as I was waiting in the back here than I had before. But I hate to say like someplace like Netflix. It all depends on who is in charge, and you know, if it's somebody who's a fan and they really want to stay true to what not Lord of the Rings, but D&D is, then we'll be all right, I think. But if Netflix has their way, and if they go by a lot of the modern ideas that D&D runs on, I think we're in trouble, because that's where we got the whole idea that orcs were racist and stuff like that. So it's like,
Yeah,
is
that
that
was a
really what we're
wizard.
going to see? Is a lot of that kind of stuff and,
That was a Wizards of the
commentary?
Coast thing. Real quick, want to highlight from our good friend, another Chris, film school rookie, $20 super chat, or I should say 1999. Hello, friends. Matt, Mr. Reagan, love your work, dude. Chris, film school
Thanks, man.
rookie, is a friend of the podcast. He's been a long time listener, and he knows Jean-Claude Van Damme, so he's super cool in our books. So
That's cool.
yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. Like, I really hope that we get a good D&D thing. In fact, if you guys have watched Vox Machina at all on Amazon, the latest animated series, it was from the animation studio that did Invincible, but it's also based off of a web series of voice actors who got together and played Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube and Twitch. It's actually a really good show, and it's got kind of like that modern humor to it, but it's set in a fantasy realm that's based off of like Dungeons and Dragons, and it's really freaking good. In fact, we're going to be talking about it on the Saturday live stream that we're doing, and I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is such a fertile world,
Yeah.
with which to tell stories in, that the potential to have like a Dungeons and Dragons TV universe similar to what Marvel's doing and Star Wars and stuff like that could be a lot of fun, but the potential to screw it up is also really big, right?
Do you guys think there will be any kind of element of actual gameplay in it, or do you think they're just going to use the universe of D&D? Because the thing is, like, I feel like you could write really any fantasy story and then just call it Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, Community, the show Community, and also Freaks and Geeks did an episode where it was the characters playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they would cut away to like
and Stranger Things, like the whole show is based around
exactly.
that.
I don't think that they would be bringing that in that literally.
I don't think so either. I just thought
the
I'd
actual world.
throw it out there, see what you guys think.
I don't know. Tom, have you heard anything about this? Because you're usually up on like all the inside
No,
news.
like I said, I know very, very little about this series. I just heard about it, and I'm just learning now more about it than I did before. So all I know otherwise, as far as like, I know that the original animated series was popular, but those characters are owned by Deke or whoever it was that made that series, or I can't remember, it was Nelvania or whoever, back in the day. So, and I know there was a lot of people who were like, "Oh, are they going to get those original characters back and all that stuff?" And I think somebody had said early on in this whole thing, like, no, because we'd have to pay for the licenses or something like that. So, I mean, I have no idea what direction they're going, what kind of a, series it's going to be overall. I mean, that's the thing you have though, is you run the risk of it just basically being a mimic of like, like Lord of the Rings. And are they going to lean more into like a Game of Thrones kind of thing, or what are they going to do? I guess, I mean, I have no idea what's going on with it, and I have no idea how it's going to be presented. Or
I'm wondering if they're going to go like Hercules' legendary journey.
Well, when you said like meta humor before, I was kind of like, that's where I got kind of worried about that. Is like, because whenever you add meta humor to anything fantasy, it just kind of doesn't fit well.
Well, I think the meta humor was kind of a guess just because of the showrunner, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying I think that would be the mistake. I think it would be the mistake to go that direction, because I think that would go over the top. If there is any winking at the camera, I think that's going to be a problem. The humor has to be self-contained in the universe, like Marvel, Matt. I think you got to.
But I think humor will help. I think humor will help distinguish it.
Yeah.
I think
humor, for sure. And you
if
can do that
if they do it well. If they do it right,
you can be playful and you can be funny, and not be kind of also subtly poking fun at, hey, we're in a Dungeons and Dragons show. It's a tightrope to walk, but I think it can be done. Matt, do you have any idea at all? Has there been any hint whether or not they're going to try to adapt any of? I know there's like novels and stories that are set in that universe, or are they just going to try to take the fundamentals and write their own original story? Do you know?
So I believe that the Dungeons and Dragons TV show that they were referencing in the articles is going to be something original, But
Okay.
the TV universe that they're talking about with all the spin-offs and stuff like that is going to draw on like the basis of like some of the novels and
Like the Dragonlance novels or
yeah,
whatever. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So I think they're going to use those as inspirations. I don't know if they're going to do like straight adaptations about them, but I do know that they plan on basically establishing a universe and then telling stories within that universe. So it's kind of like how Star Wars has like the Jedi and the bounty hunters and the underworld and stuff like that. Dungeons and Dragons will have all these little things, and each series will kind of explore like a different aspect to that.
I hope they do
So
it well. We need some new good series.
we really do. So let's talk a little bit